Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone that's listening to this. Welcome to the very first episode recorded in 2026 of the Autism podcast. Hope everyone is doing well. Hope everyone is doing amazing. And hopefully, everyone is learning more about themselves each and every day because every day is a journey. Before we get into today's episode, you know the drill. Be sure to check out our website, www.londonautismgroupcharity.org, where you can find exclusive information about our services, our chances to become a volunteer, and all of the community cafes that we host all across London that are hosted by the founders, James Gordon and Chris Papadopoulos. It is also a chance for you, if you come to these cafes, to just be yourself, meet other autistic people, and it's a completely safe space where you can literally talk about anything you want and not have to worry about masking or doing any other things that you would normally do in the outside world. You can completely be yourself in this space. And the best part, it's totally free. You don't have to pay anything. You don't have to sign any forms. You literally just come in, have a tea or coffee, speak to the founders or other autistic people around, and that's it. Nothing else. Also, the Autism Podcast has an Instagram account. If you guys have not been aware already, we are now on Instagram where we do behind the scenes footage, updates on upcoming posts and upcoming episodes, and all other information is posted on Instagram. The link will be in the description. It is the underscore autism underscore podcast. That will be in the description. So please make sure if you are on Instagram to follow that account. The last thing that I would like to announce is I have a YouTube channel called Guided Neurons, where pretty sure you guys have you ever since last year, you guys know that I have preached the main message of the Autism podcast, which is to understand yourselves. And Guided Neurons is basically a extension of that message where I go into many different insights and perspectives that are very thought-provoking. So a lot of things that I haven't really heard that much in the autistic community. And it's something that I just want to just share my thoughts and stuff. So that is basically the space where you can come in and if you just want to learn more. And here's the thing. I'm not a licensed psychologist or therapist or anything like that. I'm just a normal guy who has done a lot of internal work myself, and I just want to share those insights that hopefully might resonate with others. If you are a fan of the podcast and you are a fan of that message, be sure to subscribe to Guided Neurons. That would help a lot. Thank you very much. But anyway, enough about me, because this isn't about me anyway. On to today's guest. We have on the line Jill Corbyn, who is the founder and director of Neurodiverse Connection. How's it going?
Hey, thanks so much. Yeah, really good to be here.
Yeah, not to worry, not to worry. And of course, I can't forget our co-host of the show. We have Sophia Christophi. I can't believe I almost forgot to introduce her, but I remembered. So how's it going, Sophia?
Yeah, I'm all good, Simeon. I'm really glad to be back recording, and I'm really looking forward to this episode with our guest.
That I am as well. With that said, Sophia, do you want to kick us off?
Yes, perfect. So, Jill, please could you introduce yourself and share a little bit about your background and how and when you discovered that you're autistic?
Yeah, thanks so much. I was expecting this question having listened to some of your podcasts, but a little bit about me. I am late discovered autistic. I had a slow realization after setting up an autism program in my previous job around 6 years ago. And I was working with some really phenomenal autistic colleagues. And prior to that, I had a really traditional view um, of autism, and I had no inkling at all that I might be autistic. And my understanding changed so dramatically when I worked with people. Like suddenly I was hearing an inside of you, I was hearing their experience, I was hearing, instead of hearing about like deficit and disorder, I was hearing what it feels like to be challenged by a sensory environment, what it feels like to be in an uncertain social or professional context. I learned about processing delays and was like, wow, this is a thing. um, and it honestly took me a couple of years working with these phenomenal colleagues. And I will name them. They're in the sector: Anne Memmott, Chris Memmott, and Richard Maguire. Like the generosity and brilliance of those people is, yeah, like working with them has really changed my life. Yeah, and it took me a couple of years of working with them and hearing their experience and identifying and not trusting myself. And eventually, I remember saying to Richard, like, what how would you describe my neurotype? And he said, I remember his words. He said, I remember the first time we met and I saw you through the service station doors and I could tell by the way you were standing that you were autistic. And he held that for a couple of years until I approached him with the conversation and invited it. The thing that really led me to uncover that and to question it was because I had a massive burnout. I had been really struggling with boundaries. I had been focused on being busy, on performing, on trying to do what was expected, and I couldn't sustain it. I burnt out physically and emotionally, and I needed to do something different, and it all fell into place. And that experience is really a big part of why I wanted to establish Neurodiverse Connection, to support the sharing of stories, to challenge the traditional narrative, to support positive understanding and connection. And our work seems to often support a translation or a bridging between services and people and challenge the assumptions and the stereotypes. And we're a small, new, neurodivergent-led community interest company. So we have a really amazing staff and an associate team. Chris, who I mentioned, the co-founder leads our men's autistic meetup, and we have a host of other really brilliant staff who do a variety of things aligned with their skills, experience, and interest. And we really focus on trying to support the neurodivergent community in all that we do.
That's great. And just on that, because that's one thing I wanted to mention as well. I know the main message and mission of your company is to help the outcomes of neurodivergence. Does that mean stuff like, helping them get into work and stuff like that? Or do you want to just get in a bit of giving us a bit of a detail of that?
Yeah, so our purpose overall is to make the world a better place for neurodivergent people. So I've kind of quite a broad purpose. And there are probably three main ways we do that. So we educate through training, resources, and blogs. And we've done a lot of our training has been for in mental health inpatient and mental health community services. We connect and support, so we have some online groups and we also work with individuals. And again, that tends to be people who are stuck in complex systems, and that tends to be health funded. And we also advocate and campaign. So we have some bigger campaigns and some smaller advocacy that we do.
I really love that mission of making the world a better place for neurodivergent people. And before I go on to my next question, I did just want to say how much I love your website. I was telling Simeon before this episode even started that it's just such a great website, so much information on there, just the layout, just everything about it is just a perfect website in my mind. So we will definitely add that to the description as well for listeners to have a look. But I did want to ask you a question around kind of training and training professionals and things, as that's something that I do in my day-to-day work as well. And I was interested in what beliefs or assumptions do you most often have to help people unlearn?
So the thing that I would say is possibly one of the biggest challenges is that people feel like they know what autism is because of their traditional medical model training. So a lot of people who we interact with are like, "Oh yeah, I know about autism. I've worked with." They often they often say, "I work with people with autism. I've done this for 20 years. Yeah, I know about this." And then I'm curious, Sophia, if you also have this experience. They hear a lived experience led training, and I have to say, most of our training is delivered by members of the team who I think are much better at it than I am. That yeah, we have some really skilled team members who lead on that work, and the feedback is consistently really, really powerful. And consistently, people are saying, "I didn't know that I didn't know this.
Yeah.
I didn't understand about sensory needs. I didn't understand about processing delays. I didn't realize how easy some of these adjustments are that could make a really big difference for people. This is going to help me in my life as well as my work." How
Yeah.
does that resonate with your experience?
That really resonates with me. And I think the other thing that comes up a lot in my training is people saying that it's the first time they've had autism training delivered by an autistic person. And I think that makes such a big difference. But yeah, lots of people who have worked alongside autistic people, with autistic people for many, many years, but actually their understanding of autism is so different to what the autistic experience is really like. So it's so nice to kind of get that feedback afterwards and know that people are paying attention and listening, and hopefully making changes, even if it's changes like I know that identity first versus person first language always comes up in training, and people predominantly have been told to always put the person first. And then when I say, well, actually, the vast majority of autistic people prefer identity first language, and it's because we see it as an integral part of our identity, just that shift in language from the start of the training to the end is really noticeable.
It's such a red flag, isn't it? I purposefully mentioned it earlier because it is one of the indicators that I look for when I'm connecting with people around what is your understanding? Have you connected with the autistic community? Are you listening and responding to us? Are you using identity first language? It's such a great early indicator for where people are at, regardless of where they say they're at.
Yeah.
But yeah, really agree around. And you know what? A lot of the teams that we work with have had training in working with people with learning disability, and often people with learning disability and autistic people. We're all neurodivergent within that, but there are distinctions and differences in approach and identity. And like I used to be an advocate for people with learning disability, and I remember the Person First campaign, and it was a shift for me when I started working with autistic people. But yeah, absolutely now it's like my understanding has shifted, and it's a gift for me be able to connect with staff members and others that we're training and talk about like I also have been on this journey and my understanding has shifted, and this is how I got there. Like I learnt from and worked with autistic people, and it's great that they're doing that too, and fantastic to hear yeah that you're leading training and having those same impacts and experiences.
I was going to say as well, so just regarding the training towards uh, autistic people, because as I've mentioned multiple times on multiple episodes about how important it is for autistic people to understand themselves and not just understand themselves on a surface level, on a much deeper scale, because there's, from my experience, the just the amount of times that I have found myself doing certain things that I didn't know that came from something that happened to me in my childhood, and the way that I would react to certain things, for example, is very powerful. And just in your experience from the training that you have provided, do you believe that your training has helped autistic people understand themselves in a much better way?
So often when we do training, there will be someone who says, "I hadn't realized I was autistic," but hearing this training from an autistic person, actually, I think I might be. So I think we get a lot of people self-identify. But most of my learning has been from autistic people. And I find like so often when I connect with other people, I will learn something. Like I will often learn something about them as well as about myself. And so I can say with confidence that autistic people that we work with learn from us too. And that isn't a one-way thing. We definitely learn from them. And I'm constantly looking for things that I can steal and can bring into my training and bring into the experience, because I think there's so much more power in having a range of experiences to share, because autistic people are all so different, right? So if I'm just training to my experience, actually that's probably going to be a very limited use to people. And so to have that variety of experiences, having worked with people, having spoken with people, having that to call on, I think is a really rich and important part of our work.
Yeah, and that's something that I notice in training as well, is making sure that the audience doesn't think that my experience of autism is everyone's experience of it, because actually, for every trait that I describe during the training, somebody else can experience that in a completely different way. So I'm always trying to include examples of the experiences of autistic people that I know as well, to kind of give that broader sense of how an autistic person might experience any given situation. But interesting where you say that people sometimes at the end of training say, "Oh, I think I might be autistic," or "I've realized that maybe I'm autistic after listening to this." That happens a lot to me as well, and kind of takes me back to the example that you gave earlier, where you asked your colleague about your neurotype, and he described, just the way you stand gave it away for him. And I don't know if you have this too, but often I can go into a room and immediately spot the fellow autistic people, and I'm always kind of left thinking, do they know that they're autistic? Would it be appropriate to tell them that I think they might be autistic? And there have been a few occasions where people have kind of come up afterwards and said, "Oh, actually, this has really resonated with me." And I thought, yes, my autism radar definitely picked you up. It's interesting, isn't it, how we can kind of sense that about each other and kind of pick it out.
Right, like there could be a really cost-effective solution to the diagnosis waiting list.
Yeah,
Right, just give us a
100%.
little panel, walk people past us.
yeah, yes, I think that's a great idea.
I mean, it literally just it makes such a difference, doesn't it? Because I mean, obviously, you both are in a similar field where you have that insider knowledge because both of you are autistic. It's a lot easier to explain what autism really is compared to someone who is a potentially who's not autistic but has probably just seen it from the outside, and obviously they will have a limited understanding of autism because they haven't experienced it themselves compared to both of you who's doing training but also experiences what it's like. It must make a huge difference, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And I really resonated as well with what you said, Sophia, about identifying people. So we do a lot of work with hospitals and ward teams, and including reviewing the built environment. So hospital, but especially mental health services, are a sensory nightmare. And so we will often walk around, or we will talk to the staff and sometimes patients as well as we do that. What are the challenges? Are there any hotspots, any areas where there tend to be problems? We will share our experience of being in the space, what we find hard, areas that might be more comfortable. And very often as we go around, there are people who, like, I can't say I identify them as autistic, but there are indicators there. And so I have that question with staff, and staff are like, "Oh no, like that person doesn't have a diagnosis." And so it's just, I would really, really love to see more of a shift to needs-led care. Like there is such a peculiar thing around diagnosis and thresholds and needing to be sure and needing assessments in place. And it's just like, for me, identifying myself as autistic has been really, really supportive for me, understanding myself, connecting with others, and being well. And it isn't essential. Like, we don't have to be absolutely sure. We can help someone to understand their needs and to approach things differently, regardless. Like,
Yeah.
let's shift the focus here.
Yeah, I definitely agree with that. especially with the waiting lists as they are. People are waiting 3, 4, 5+ years for a diagnosis, and they may go into that appointment and the assessor says, yes, you are autistic, but they've still been the same person that they were across all of those years waiting. So they've had no support in place up until that point. And actually, all that's really changed is they now have a piece of paper that says you're autistic. So I'm definitely for needs-led approaches, and I too wish there was much more of that.
And I love how we're modeling that, right? As in our respective organizations, in your meetup groups, your meetup spaces, like everyone is welcome. I hear that from you, and that's the same in our spaces. Like we don't gatekeep, we don't require anything of anyone. People are welcome to come and connect and explore. Yeah, we actually created a resource around self-identifying. Because often people, when they approach us, they're like, oh, but I don't have a diagnosis, or I'm not sure, or and so we wanted to be really clear and affirming that we welcome and invite that. Like we see that as we trust people's experience of themselves, and we see that as absolutely credible and valid. So there's like a collection of resources that we've created as part of like, what are the gaps, what are the challenges, what are people saying to us, what questions are they bringing, and let's create resources that give clarity and put words to this, and might support people identifying and in other parts of life.
That's amazing, and definitely something I will be signposting people to.
Yeah, awesome.
Yeah, guys, definitely check out Neurodiverse Connection. It definitely sounds like a great place if you are having problems identifying if you're autistic or not, or just want more of an understanding of how autism works. Definitely check it out. It definitely sounds like a great place.
Yeah, we have like, so as well as the resources, like we have some meetup groups. So we have the Autistic Men's Meetup group, the Black Autistic Meetup, and Late Discovered meetups. We're hoping to grow our offering, but they're online spaces that are free to attend. And yeah, all neurodivergent-led.
Amazing.
All right, well, guys, that will be in the description as we mentioned before, so please check that out.
Yeah, so Neurodiverse Connection places emphasis on neurodivergent-led practices, which I love. And I'm interested in how that shapes the work that you do.
It's really fundamental. And I think it really aligns with what we spoke to earlier. So my experience has been that my understanding has shifted profoundly when I heard from other autistic people. And honestly, we believe if we're going to get services right, then we need to speak to the people who have lived it and are most affected. My experience previously working particularly in like NHS aligned services is that there is often an emphasis on connecting with family carers, and I think that is also really important and is often well intended, but we can't do that at the expense of hearing people who have a direct lived experience. And like, it can be really hard to get it right for people, and that doesn't mean we shouldn't do it. Like, let's work with other autistic people, let's work with community organisations, let's ask people what the barriers are. Like, we've just done a big bit of work with a mental health trust, and it was an engagement exercise for us to work with people who are placed out of area and work specifically to hear the experiences of Seldamas groups. Neurodivergent people were part of that, and and really, like, what are the barriers to you accessing support? Like, what are the challenges? What needs to change? What is your experience of equality in these services? Like, how does your identity impact connection positively or negatively? Like, what supports you? How can we get this right? How can we do this better? And I love that organisation, that mental health trust, commissioned a user-led organisation to support and facilitate and ask those questions. And we had a lived experience team who led that work. And we can have different conversations because we're part of the community. We can have different conversations because we bring the lived experience. We can hear in a different way. I think we the trust reflected that we drew out different themes because it was lived experience led. And we brought some joy and creativity to it. We had like workshops and conversations, and there was some incredible art created. And yeah, so I feel really excited about, like, not just for autistic people, but more broadly, lived experience leadership is something that I'm really passionate about. And I think it transforms the approach, the design, the delivery, what we hear, and the outputs. And I think it helps us get it right first time, even though often it may be a slower journey. Actually, it's faster because we get it right.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that kind of reminds me of sort of the peer support world as well, in terms of some of the work I do is around training autism peer support workers. And we often talk about how we can bring so much lived experience, but actually we are not seen as professionals. And in many contexts, having that person with lived experience absolutely is having a professional on board. And it's trying to get, I think, broader communities to recognize that lived experience is not a case of just having somebody share their experience. There is there is a lot that kind of goes into that, and it should be seen and valued and recognized as a profession.
Yeah, I strongly agree. And we provide mentoring and support to neurodivergent people in lived experience roles. And I consider myself to bring lived experience. I consider myself in a lived experience role. And I think that there are unique benefits and also unique challenges for us. And for me, one of the challenges is around the boundaries. Like, so I'm expected to bring some of my personal experience, but only sanitized, only presented in the right way. Like, not too much, not too personal, but tell us the story.
Yeah.
I'm expected to behave in a professional way, often requiring like neurotypical norms. And I'm expected to navigate all of that in a changing environment with different people and different expectations. Like, I think the demands of the role are significantly greater than a lot of other professional roles because of the lack of clarity and because of that unique blend of personal and professional. Like, I need to navigate the system, I need to understand the lingo and the challenging words and the acronyms. Um, I need to understand how all of this works and how all of these different roles interrelate, and I need to perhaps bring some of the most difficult things that I've ever experienced, but talk about it in a way that doesn't bring it like too much emotion or doesn't feel like oversharing or doesn't burden others or presents it as solved or fixed or just showing the learning and just telling enough. um
Yeah.
it's incredibly demanding, yeah, and incredibly unsupported. We see people doing incredible things, but often at great personal cost.
I definitely resonate with that as well. Just especially the part where you mentioned about lived experienced kind of teaching and stuff. Because in a way, that's the reason why I kind of started doing this podcast and I started doing guided neurons as well, where I go into more details about understanding yourself is literally through lived experience. Anything that you do talk about on your training, a lot of the times that information has come from your own experience. And obviously, like you said before, that it's not necessarily going to work for everyone because obviously everyone is different. I'm pretty sure you have found ways to kind of deliver the training in a way that can be resonated by a majority of people. Because I know you were talking about the professional expectations for autistics and stuff. I wanted to find out, would you ever consider giving training to neurotypical people that's willing to find out about autism in the
Yeah,
future?
absolutely. Thank you, Simeon. So we do work with a lot of neurotypical people, and sometimes it's formal training, and sometimes it's reflection and conversation and working alongside. And I think both of those can be hugely impactful. And we really talk a lot about big up Damien Milton for double empathy theory. And my colleague Kay and I also wrote a chapter in his recent book around embodied double empathy and the embodied difference for autistic people, and the challenge for often neurotypical staff working with autistic people in difficult sensory environments. Yeah, so absolutely we work with non-autistic people to better understand. And I like how I understand this is like for a long time, autistic people are expected to do all of the work and to make all of the adaptations and to function and present to neurotypical norms. And the work that Sophia, I hear you're doing this too, like we kind of like there is a movement, there is such a movement, there are so many people and organizations and places where this is happening, and there is a shift as we work with non-autistic people to understand. We're seeing a movement and towards a meeting in the middle so that actually we don't have to do all of the work. People are starting to understand and to meet us differently. And that's happening in individual conversations as people state what they need and advocate for themselves. And it's happening in, the training that some of my colleagues have been doing. They've had hundreds of people attending each training session across 58 mental health trusts all over England. So, like, the big and the small are all really important in this. Like, it all supports the shift that we need.
Yeah, I think describing it as meeting in the middle is a great way of describing it, and it's similar to how I talk about double empathy in training too, in that, it shouldn't be the case that autistic people have to change to navigate a neurotypical world. And equally, we're not asking neurotypical people to be able to communicate in an autistic way, because that wouldn't work that way round either.
Nope.
But it's kind of bridging that gap so that there is less breakdown in communication or less misunderstandings. And I think for lots of neurotypical people, when I give the example that I find it really hard to read neurotypical people, but actually I've noticed that neurotypical people find it really hard to read me, they're often surprised by that because they've never really thought about it that way round. It's a two-way problem. And I love that you mentioned Damien Milton as well, because I think we've had three separate guests mention him and the double empathy problem so far. So I think we ought to get Damien on if you're
Oh,
listening,
do it.
Damien.
So much love for Damien. He's such
We'd
a
love to
legend.
have you on as a guest as well.
Yeah, 100%. I definitely want to talk to you if that's the case. I mean, if you guys heard how much I was talking about double empathy problem was on David's episode, yeah, definitely. If you are listening, Damien, please reach out to us. By the way, the book that you was talking about, that you actually had a portion in, is that the double empathy reader?
It is, yep.
Aha, okay. Because yeah, Katie Monday was who was a previous guest. They had a portion in that as well.
So my next question is, how has your vision for the organization evolved since it launched?
Wow. So we're in really tough times at the moment. So we've been around for 4 years and we have grown at pace, and it's a really, really difficult funding environment right now. So we're facing a lot of uncertainty right now. And I think the vision has changed because it's gone from, not entirely, but it's kind of shifted from me to we. Like originally, Chris co-founded the organization with me, but honestly, the first kind of 6 months, I was just like freelancing to bring money in so I could set the website up and like kind of working for free to establish it. And then we slowly grew, and now there's around 10 of us, and we're able to do more. The thing that I love about how the organisation has developed is that we really are kind of greater than the sum of our parts. Like when I hear you reflect that you love the website, I'm like, wow, like what a great team that we created that. There is no chance I could have done it on my own. And so as we've developed, we've been able to connect with our team and also with the community that we engage. And and it's enormously changed the shape, and it's changed how we work and what we can do. Yeah, so there's been a dramatic shift. I don't think the overall vision has changed. It's always been about doing good things that gets us paid and enables us to create things that support and improve life for the neurodivergent community. That hasn't shifted, but what we do, how we do it, I think has really benefited from a collaboration and the input of the staff, associate team, people we connect with, our partners, people, we've worked alongside some really just wonderful, wonderful people. Yeah, and that's how we change, isn't it, in relationship? As you were reflecting there, the thing that came to mind was how much good work there is happening that is community led, that is neurodivergent led. I think there are some really great individuals and small organizations. And one of the things that I love is like how we're able to connect and collaborate. So we did a campaign against ABA and PBS, and there was so much love and support for that. Like so many people stood with us, signed up to it, supported us in making the challenge, shared the message. So like I feel organisationally we're greater than the sum of our parts. I think more broadly as a community, as an activist community, I also see that, and I love that we're seeing these emerging kind of user-led, neurodivergent-led organisations, and it's such a joy to me to hear like other people are doing training, other people are leading work, other people are working with peers and advocates. It's just like I think sometimes when times are hard, there can be a real scarcity mindset, but actually, like we really need all of us to be doing this. Like that's what supports the shift. And it really just is a joy to hear, like Sophia, from you today, like other people are having these conversations, and like that's how we get change.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's definitely something I've noticed as well, especially over maybe the last 5 or 10 years. The amount of neurodivergent-led content online and all of this kind of really rich information. I actually caught somebody on TV the other day use the word neurodivergent as they were explaining autism, ADHD, and similar neurodivergence, and it really struck me because I thought, not that long ago, you wouldn't have even heard people talk about autism on TV or ADHD, or they were talking about things like this, but incorrectly. And now they're using words like neurodivergent. And I think that's a big change. Again, with the identity first language, I see much more of that now as well from people outside of the community too. So I do think change is happening. And I agree with you. I always like it when I hear that there's all of these kind of pockets of people across up and down the country that are doing this kind of work. And hopefully, slowly but surely we are making an impact.
I see it. I see the change. I see the change. Like more is needed for sure, but I really have the feeling of like momentum and a shift happening, which
Yeah.
is such a joy.
Yeah. And I think with the amount of kind of information there is now, I often think that if we had this level of awareness and exposure, especially on TV and things, back before I was diagnosed, I think I would have been more likely to have identified it in myself. So I also didn't know that I'm autistic. It was pointed out to me by somebody else that I might be. But I often think for kind of this generation, there's so many characters that are played by autistic people as well, which I think is great. That I think it gives young people more of an opportunity to see someone that represents them and their experience and go, oh, maybe I'm autistic. I can really relate to that character. So I often wonder if that was the case, 15 years ago, would I have seen somebody on TV and thought, yes, this is my experience. This is what's going on for me.
If
Yeah.
I'm honest with you, just to kind of expand on that, this is why I said in David's episode about the strength in numbers, about how the more people that come out and showcase their autisticness and not only showcase it but embrace it, just the amount of impact it has. And it goes back to what I've been saying all the time about understanding yourself and understanding your value. Because when you understand yourself more, your value is increased tenfold. And just from what Jill's been talking about today, just imagine even more people that are not even just people who have platforms, but just people like you that's listening right now, who has the ability to find your own value, and that gets multiplied by 20, even 50. Just the amount of change that will be coming out, not just in the media, but just in real life scenarios, will just increase even more. One thing that also you mentioned earlier, Joe, about how when times are hard, that a lot of autistic people have a scarcity mindset. When you said that, that hit me so much because if I'm honest with you, I resonate with that line a lot because, just in my life, because of just the amount of struggles that I had. And I'm pretty sure a lot of other autistic people would probably have that same mindset. And it's mainly, I believe, because of it tends to, the negatives tend to, you know, impact our way of thinking way more than the positives, because I don't know if it's because it leads us to having meltdowns or shutdowns or burnout. So we tend to ruminate on that. And because of that, it ends up going around in circles and you just think about it even more. And I definitely believe this is why we have to be more aware of ourselves, because we don't realize that we could be sabotaging ourselves and we're not even aware that we're doing it.
I also feel like it's a really human thing. Like when times are hard, we do hold on. Like it feels like a really natural reaction to do that. And also that isn't how I want to be. Like so there is something I think that comes with the awareness that you describe that enables me to choose my response instead of just being caught in reaction. And like there is a shift in that for me that has come with understanding myself, being a little bit more gentle, not giving myself such a hard time, not chasing perfection quite as much. It's still in there. Like there is a gentleness and a relaxed kind of approach that has come that doesn't hold on as tight. And that is, yeah, it's been a really helpful shift for me in being able to choose to respond rather than react.
Are there any practical strategies that you use to help with that shift, or would you say it's more of a case of kind of time and experience and something that has naturally evolved?
So for me, that is not a natural evolution. It has taken a lot of attention and intention. And honestly, the first thing that comes to me is like to breathe, because I will hold my breath like, and I will contract.
Yeah.
And so that like that grounding practice, that remembering to breathe, speaking what's happening. Like I experienced alexithymia, so I struggle to identify feelings. I struggle to locate what's happening for me. And so I create pause and opportunity in my day where I can play detective. Like, is my body needing anything? Am I hungry? Are there any feelings there? Are there any sensations in my body? Um, so making deliberate space for that is really supported by breathing. Um,
That
uh,
always helps, doesn't it?
right? Yeah.
I do exactly the same thing. I'll find myself reading or watching something, and I'm like, oh my goodness, why am I holding my breath? And then I'm trying to kind of breathe, but then I'm thinking too much about breathing, so it doesn't feel natural, and it all just gets really kind of complicated, and it should just be something that's happening and doesn't require that much thought. But yeah, I totally get that kind of it not just happening intuitively as such.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
would say I have a similar, not exactly with the breathing, but it's more like the alexithymia, where a lot of the times, things will be on my mind, but I'm not consciously aware of those thoughts or emotions. So I'm just acting out. And then people, like, for example, my friend who lives with me, there's many times where I've been upset about something. And he comes to me and says, "What is going on with you?" And I always say nothing because I'm thinking there's nothing wrong with me. But in reality, someone said something that really triggered me 2 weeks ago, has been bugging me ever since. And it's only now it's affecting me because of my, I guess, my delayed emotional processing. But, at the end of the day, I think we all three of us here have given examples of how we're able to identify that now. And just to kind of clarify what I normally do, I would say journaling definitely helps with me because whenever you're writing something and you're just writing down your own thoughts, it just becomes very natural. You're just writing. Normally times you would think about what to write, but I'm just writing, and next minute I know I've got like 3 pages just worth of thoughts, and then when I stop and I look and I'm like, well, I had that much in my head, and then when I start reading it, I'm like, wow, this is what I was thinking. Like I had no idea, and then when I start reading it out loud and actually realizing this is what's going on in my head, then it's like, oh, that's why I was feeling the way I was feeling. It makes so much sense now, and then it's just like all those intense kind of heavy thoughts that's going on in my mind just kind of goes away because I can now
Yeah.
see it.
Yeah, and it kind of frees up space in your mind, doesn't it? I
Yeah.
often find that, like, just before I'm about to go to sleep, if I can't kind of switch off my brain because it's just going over and over the things that have happened today or what's going to happen tomorrow or next week or things that I need to do, and I just can't get it to stop, just typing a list out on my phone, I feel like I've kind of transferred it from my brain to my phone. So it's like okay to forget about it and it's okay to not think about it because it's there and I can pick it up in the morning. And it just makes everything feel a little bit more manageable, even if they're really simple things, things that I'm not going to forget to do the next day. I think it's just having that kind of space to offload it somewhere.
Yes,
Yeah, journaling sounds like a great strategy as well.
strong identify with both of you, and I also regularly journal. And I, rather than making notes, I tend to email myself. So I'll start work and have like 5 emails from myself with notes from the night before. But the other thing that I love to do is to voice note. And so I have a couple of people or a handful of people that we do like voice note downloads. And for me, it is a real like beautiful example of autistic communication because it's like I get to speak for like 5 or 10 minutes about my thing, and then the other person will speak, often sharing an example from their life, and they'll download 5, 10 minutes, however long. Yeah, and there isn't the to and fro that is often expected in other forums. And for me, speaking it out is a really helpful way to process, to identify what's there, to look for feelings, to understand what's happening, and also to connect. Like a big part of the change for me has been in authentic connection with others. And so that openness and speaking the things that perhaps I would have held or wouldn't have been able to articulate before, to speak it openly and connect with another person and be heard, it can be really powerful in my experience.
What I wanted to ask you now is because you briefly touched on this earlier where you was talking about being part of giving some sort of contribution towards the NHS and stuff. And I noticed that you are a delivery partner for the Culture of Care program, which includes work towards the NHS England's quality transformation. And I just wanted to know, would you know if it's possible to kind of, since you're part of that, be able to kind of get your service as a recommendation towards newly diagnosed autistics?
When you say get your service, what do you mean by that?
So, for example, everything that you do at Neurodiverse Connection. So, whenever someone is diagnosed autistic from the NHS, I think Sophia has touched on this earlier about how she just got a bunch of, quite frankly, useless leaflets about what is autism and stuff like that. So rather than getting those type of things, which is very generic and quite frankly incorrect, rather than that, we can get a recommendation towards neurodiverse connection instead, or so you can get that actual training from actual autistics.
Right, got you. Thanks. Um, So the Culture of Care is a quality transformation programme working with 58 mental health providers, mostly NHS trusts and some private providers. And they're working with all of those organisations and over 200 wards to help them improve the quality and the culture on the wards and in the organisations. A Neurodiverse Connection is part of that. And we've got some really, really brilliant partners. Like, it has been such a joy and such an exciting project to be part of. But Neurodiverse Connection lead on the autism-informed care element. So there are three underpinning equity elements: anti-racism, trauma-informed, and autism-informed. So we lead on the autism-informed element of that. And so it's more about mental health inpatient culture and care than diagnostic service and support. So it isn't the vehicle to do that. And I think also for us at the moment, there's a real challenge with the disruption and change with NHS England moving into the Department of Health and Social Care. So for the kind of the bigger influence stuff, you're so right. Post-diagnostic, and while people are waiting for diagnostics, the information support, I would go further than saying it isn't very good. I would go as far as to say often it's harmful, actually. Often it's discriminatory, stigmatizing, and really outdated. So there is a need to influence there. The culture of care isn't the way into it, but I really agree that it needs to happen.
Okay, well, hopefully, what you're doing could potentially lead to something like that in the future. Hopefully.
Yeah, we've worked with like often what happens, again, Sophia, I imagine you have this experience, like we will start one bit of work with a trust or with a ward or an organisation, and they will realise the benefit of lived experience leadership and what we bring, and then other opportunities will grow from that. Come and train this team, come and do a walk around this ward, share your reflections on this new build, work with this person who we're struggling to understand and meet the needs for. Like, often once we're connected in relationship with a team, they will come back to us for more. And there are some health boards that we've worked with where they have specifically asked to include and signpost to NDC, and our information and resources are regularly updated and are there and freely available. And we do kind of vet them to be neurodivergent affirming or to reference when there is harmful content, but we think it's useful for people to see and be aware of. Yeah, and Mehmet as well. For those people who are interested in kind of the latest research, and there's a monthly blog for us that gives a research summary, which is really brilliant. It's really, really brilliant. So I do encourage people, if you're interested in the latest research, that's a really wonderful overview where you can get a sense of what's happening and also get links to further information if you want to read in more depth.
All right, then we will definitely put that in the description if you guys want to check that out. Do you offer help in terms of autistic people's mental health at all? If, for example, any person that comes to your training and they start talking about things that they might be struggling with, does anyone in your team kind of help with that, or?
So at the moment, most of our work directly with people is funded through often NHS, sometimes local authorities or integrated care boards, other trusts. Or we rarely work with people who fund us themselves. And what we have, kind of the best way for people to connect with us and get support is through the groups. We also run a course called the Neurodivergent Wellbeing Approach, and that is usually an 8-week course. It's run by Kay, who has really taught me all I know about embodiment. So in terms of people who are looking to support and connect with us, the best places really to do that are through the groups that I mentioned earlier, and I think you said you'd include a link. So those are monthly and free to access. And we also run a training course called the Neurodivergent Wellbeing Approach. That's led by my colleague Kay, and that's an 8-week course that supports people to connect and understand more about themselves. And again, there's more information about that and a wait list on the website if people are interested. We do charge for that course, but we also include bursary places. So if people are struggling and think it's of interest, then yeah, there is opportunity to take part with at no cost.
That link will also be in the description. So if anyone is struggling, feel free to check that out as well. Okay, so I wanted to ask about your team now. So I know that you mentioned earlier that you work with neurotypical as well as neurodivergent. Are all of your team members autistic, or is it a mixture of autistic and non-autistic?
So we have a little bit of a mix in the team. So I would say we're a predominantly neurodivergent team. Um, uh, and in terms of the people who are delivering service, so if one of our team is delivering a training on autism informed care, the trainer will be autistic.
Hmm. Yeah.
But yeah, we do have a little bit of a mix within the team.
Okay, fair enough. I definitely believe that is a very healthy kind of balance because one thing that I would kind of disagree with within the autistic community, because I've heard a couple people say this in the community cafes, because as a volunteer, that we should just only be around neurodivergent people only. I can understand why some people would say that because of the bad experiences they've had with neurotypical people. But I believe the reasons because of that is not because they're neurotypical, it's because they just have a very ignorant approach towards autistic people. But that's not everybody. And I personally believe that there are some people that are willing to find out from your perspective, and because of that, it definitely does open the doors to getting other people's perspectives from our side. We will get perspectives that we've never got before because it's coming from someone who is outside of that, and vice versa. So I definitely think that what the fact that you have, some neurotypical people within your team, whilst majority being neurodivergent, is definitely that kind of healthy balance that I'm talking about.
Yeah, and I have some like amazing neurotypical friends. Like there are some beautiful people in my life who are not autistic, and part of the joy is in understanding our difference and like the bounce that can come from our different perspectives can be a really, really beautiful thing. And in terms of recruitment, like sometimes if it's a core part of the role that someone needs to be neurodivergent because our work is neurodivergent led, our groups are run by neurodivergent, mainly associates, so some staff as well. So sometimes it is a requirement of the role, and in other roles, it is about finding the right person regardless of neurotype. And so I think it's one of those things where sometimes we will specify because we're a lived experience led organisation, and in other roles, it really is a broader thing about getting the right person. And uh, and in that instance, we won't ask people what their neurotype is. We will ask them, what can you bring to this role? Do you need any adjustments? How do we work together? Yeah, so there's a diversity of process depending on what role people are in and what's needed.
I believe you would find out what the neurotype is based on that though, wouldn't you? When you find out what kind of value they do bring and seeing them in action, you would kind of determine what their neurotype is majority of the time, wouldn't you? Would you say that?
Like I guess this links back to the conversation we were having earlier, Sophia, which is that often we have a sense of people, and there are instances where my sense has been wrong, or like I guess I'm mindful that sometimes neurotype isn't the important thing. Like it isn't even something we'd like actively consider because it isn't part, actually what we want to know is does the person have this skill? How do we weigh up the person who has X skill against the person who has Y skill, both of which might be amazing for the organization? So like I don't think there's entirely a blindness to it, but I also think sometimes other things are prioritized and that's right, isn't it? For some roles.
What do you think are the biggest opportunities or challenges for improving outcomes and understanding for neurodivergent people here in the UK? And how do you hope Neurodiverse Connection will contribute to that?
What a big question. So the thing that really comes to mind for me, a lot of my work at the moment is in mental health services. And what I see is that there aren't good ways for teams working with patients to identify who's specifically autistic, but actually broader, who's neurodivergent, what adjustments do they need, and how can we work with them effectively in a way that actually supports them to get well rather than means that people are ill, struggling, staying in hospital a long time, or even experiencing high levels of restraint, seclusion, and the transforming care statistics, something like autistic, the average length of stay for autistic people in inpatient services is 4.8 years compared to I think around 30 days for the general population. It's really awful. And yet there is no mandatory screening, identification, recording, and therefore the required adjustments aren't made. Even where people are identified, often teams don't know what they can do to support people better. And if people have never been supported to understand and articulate their own needs, they don't know either. So I think there's a real opportunity for us to mandate the identification of neurodivergence. I think more broadly would be helpful, and specifically autistic people if we need to be more targeted, and to require engagement with patients and carers to support a change in approach that improves outcomes. We're more likely to be traumatized, we're more likely to experience interpersonal violence, we're more likely to experience sexual violence, we're more likely to have a mental health problem, we're more likely to end up in hospital, we're more likely to have a longer length of stay. The statistics are very, very profound, and yet there is not a concerted systemic effort to identify, understand and meet need. And I think it has to be mandated. So we will see what the future brings for Neurodiverse Connection. But my hope, I've been speaking about the need for this to be mandated. And I think, the work that's been done by Jackie Dyer and colleagues, Black Thrive Global are a partner of ours, the work that has been done to mandate PCREF, Patient Carer Race Equity framework, has been really phenomenal and is an example that we can learn from to support equality for the neurodivergent population. I would also like to mention the Autistic Space Framework. I don't know if you're familiar with that, but it was created by Autistic Doctors International. It's one that we've been advocating for the duration of the Culture of Care programme and since it emerged in 2023 when the paper came out. But I think the framework and guidance there is really, really helpful. It gives people the direction and the prompts around things that they might need to consider. So for me, it's really helpful for staff, but also for those of us who want to understand our needs and what adjustments we might be able to make. And the SPACE framework, for people who aren't familiar, stands for sensory need, predictability, acceptance, communication, and empathy. And it also has prompts around physical processing and emotional space. So it's a really, really helpful framework. We're hoping in the coming months to build on the excellent work from Autistic Doctors International and to share a kind of a workbook that people can use to understand their needs and to think about what adjustments they might request and what care and support they might need, and also a safety plan in the back. So one to look out for, but like a real nod and a cheer for Autistic Doctors International in creating that framework. I think it's a super useful approach.
Yeah, that sounds
definitely
like a
is.
brilliant framework.
Definitely is. All right, so Jill, I guess this is my favorite part of the each episode where we find out what your special interests are.
So we've spent the last hour or so talking about one of my special interests.
Mhm.
But the one that I want to mention is my dog Bat. She's a little working cocker spaniel, and yeah, she's a joy and a beauty, and she's a constant companion and a great support and regulator for me. She gets me out every day into nature, which I love. And when we first created the website, we didn't have any photos. And I suggested to Tom, who was building it, that as a temporary measure, we could just make all of the photos pictures of Bat. And he was like I was I wasn't really joking. I was just like, we could just have a website about my dog. And he was just like, no. But she does have a space on our team page, and there is a hidden photo gallery. So if you need clickbait, if you're having a bad day, then I point you in that direction because she's a real beauty.
That is an excellent idea. I love that as well. I think so many of the autistic children and young people that I work with have such a connection to animals. I'm the same with my dog, and my favorite part is we often talk about special interests in our kind of Zoom meetings as well, and somebody will mention their pet, and then that's it. Everybody's off to go and bring their dogs, their cats, everyone to come and have a look on the camera. So I love that you've got that companion, and I'm also a massive dog fan. So I will be going to find those pictures of bats.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah.
And before we finish, I also wanted to ask both of you a question. So thinking about the special interests that I've heard you speak about, and perhaps reflecting on our conversation today or a current interest for you, I wondered, Simeon, if you'd be able to make a music recommendation, and Sophia, if you have a book recommendation.
Do you want to go first, Sophia?
Okay. So for me, books wise, I kind of really like psychology books, but I also like that blend of neurology as well. And I really enjoy Oliver Sacks's writing. And I think he also had such a good grasp of neurodivergence, probably way ahead of time. So if I were to recommend a book, I would say it's The Man Who Mistook His Wife for a Hat.
I haven't read that, so I'd love a recommendation. Thank you so much. Simeon, where are we going musically?
Right. So before I give you some recommendations, I need to kind of this is how I normally would recommend because I have such a vast library of music I listen to. Could you give me some music, some genres that you actually like, so that way I can kind of cater it towards that?
Okay. So I'm going to tell you some of the songs that I'm listening to at the moment, or
Mhm.
some of the musicians. So I'm currently listening to Ancient Light by I'm With Her. That's on repeat. And also I've been loving. Do you know what? I don't even know how to say his name. Obong JR. I'm sure I've mispronounced that
Oh, Open Jail,
terribly.
yeah, yeah, yeah. I know who that is. Yeah.
Not in Surrender and Born in This Body are a joy to me.
Okay, so would you say what would you say are your most prominent genres that you listen to? Is it
Most
um
prominent genres. Yeah, I just jump about terribly. I just listen to one song on repeat for a
okay,
terrible earworm.
okay.
So a little bit folksy, either folksy, slight verging on depressed, or upbeat and jump around. Is that vague? Is that terribly vague?
I mean, it is. If you could give me a little bit more specific, because there's depressing songs in literally every genre. So this, but
Give me an upbeat thing. So, I mean, give me something that is going to lift my mood in the way this conversation has lifted my mood.
okay, all right. So I've got a couple then. So I would give you, say, The Knife by Maggie Rogers. We got Take a Bite by Biba Doobie. 27 Kids by Gremlin. So it's Grmln. And I would say Lemon to a Knife Fight by The Wombats.
I'm gonna go straight to By the Wombats, a band that I'm familiar with, and obviously, but so I say obviously, actually, you don't know that my dog is called Bat, but her full name is Wombat. So I think that is a
Oh, perfect.
perfect place to round
Perfect.
up this conversation, Simeon.
Oh, well, let's go with that then. Oh, another one. Sorry, I'll just add another one. So Come Back Again by Victor Lomberg featuring Ed Mills is definitely one.
Amazing. Thank you
Uh,
so much.
yeah, no worries.
I love connecting in with both of you and your interests as well. That's yeah, a beautiful balance. Thank you.
No,
Thank
it's fine.
you.
No
Really
worries.
enjoyed this episode and
Yeah,
having you on as our guest. I think this
definitely.
is a
I would definitely
great
say the
start to
same.
the year.
Awesome. Great. Thanks so much. Best of luck with everything that comes next.
You too.
Yeah, you too. So just remember, guys, everyone that's listening, please check out Neurodiverse Connection. The website will be in the description below. If you are in need of training for autism in any way, if you are struggling, or if you may or may not think that you're autistic and you just need more clarification, Neurodiverse Connection definitely seems like the way to go to give yourself more clarity. I mean, you've definitely heard plenty of examples as to what can happen when, someone comes to this training and they get more understanding of themselves, which is what I've been preaching all along. What we've both been preaching all along. So if anyone still doubts what I mean when I say understand yourself and think, oh, it doesn't actually work, Jill would like to know your location if that's the case. So yeah. But anyway, thank you guys all for listening today. It's definitely been great having you on, Jill. And remember, everyone, stay blessed and keep expanding.